All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome again to the virtual graduate off-campus housing information session. We're really happy to have you here today with us. And first off, just want to say congratulations on your admission to Boston College. We're really excited to have you here this fall and happy to kind of walk you through what your new home for 1, 2, 3, 4, or more years might be here in the city of Boston. So we're going to go ahead and get started with today's presentation, and folks will be admitted to the session as we go along. Just a couple of rules of the road here. We are on a normal Zoom session, so please make sure to keep yourselves muted throughout the presentation. If you would like to have your screen on, that's totally fine, whatever is most comfortable for you. But for the sake of us who are presenting, so that we can keep track of what we are saying and when we are saying it, please go ahead and keep yourselves unmuted, and we'll keep those distractions to a minimum. So for introductions, my name is Andrew Klopstein, pronouns are he, him, his. I'm the Assistant Director for Off-Campus Student Living here in the Office of Residential Life. I am originally from St. Louis, Missouri, and transplanted from St. Louis to Boston 6 years ago, going into my 7th year now this July. And so I very much empathize with many of you who are traveling to Boston from various parts of the United States or even internationally. I earned my master's degree in higher education administration a couple of years ago, and I'm currently pursuing my MBA at the institution. I want to turn it on over to Sarah, who's going to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Like Andrew said, my name is Sarah, pronouns she, her, hers. I am the graduate assistant for off-campus student living. Currently going into my 2nd year of the higher education administration master's program over in the Lynch School. I'm originally from Long Island, so I went through this process that you're all going through right now just a little less than a year ago. So I'm really happy to just be a resource to you all.
All right. Thank you so much, Sarah. I want to kind of overview some of the initial resources of what our office can do for you. The big one that we're going to be able to show you is the off-campus housing database, and I'm going to show you it today. But you'll find the address there on your screen right here. Go ahead and copy it down. Take a screenshot, take a photo of this page. This is going to be your one-stop shop to find housing if you are still in the search for off-campus housing, which is totally fine. You're right in the middle of kind of our general timeline. You're not behind, so don't feel pressured or stressed. So let me go ahead and share my screen here so that you can get a sense of what the off-campus database looks like. So you should see this right here. This is offcampushousing.bc.edu, otherwise known as our off-campus housing database. And you're simply going to log in with your BC username and password up here in the right-hand corner. And if you haven't gotten that yet, don't worry. Simply register as a guest and we'll go ahead and approve your account. But some of the features of the database really are what I want to highlight here. This is our housing tab, which if you click this button right here, you would find. This is all of the apartments available for us at this current moment around our 3 campuses. Chestnut Hill campus, our main campus being right here, the Brighton campus being here, and our Newton campus, home of the law school, being right here. All of these blue dots are apartments that are available, and of course you can zoom in and out. I do want to highlight some of the features here of these listings. You can click this more button and pull down filtering options to find exactly what you're looking for. And if you do filter out all 353 apartments that are currently in the scope of this view right here, you click on one of those apartments. We're going to go ahead and click on this one, and it'll take you into the listing. Very, very similar to most listing services like Zillow and apartments.com, but with a little more refinement towards what we need around our traditional off-campus community here at Boston College. If this is the listing that you really like, you can heart it and it'll save it to your profile, which you would then be able to refer to again if you go to your account page. But you're going to see a whole slew of photos that are available for any apartment, and the rent, how many bedrooms that are available, when it's available, who it might be convenient for, and importantly, an apartment description. So a lot of great features here. These are amenities, again, that you can filter out by clicking that more button that I mentioned earlier. It's going to show you what's nearby for shopping, airports, Logan being our primary airport here in Boston. And if you are a couple or a person who has a child, you have information about the schools in the area as well as provides transportation scores as well. So you can kind of get a sense of where you might be, how you might be getting to where you want to go. If this is a place that you find that you are interested in or you want to inquire more about, you can simply contact them through our database, either the agency or the individual landlord. Their phone number is right here, or you can send a message directly through the database by typing it in here. Really simple. Again, this database is a place for you to connect with agencies and landlords all in one single space. I also want to highlight the roommates tab, which you're going to find right there. And if you're looking for either a roommate to enter a housing search with and to move in with, or you are looking for somebody who has an apartment and currently is in need of a roommate to fill a vacancy in that apartment, this is going to be the place for you to do that. Much like a dating profile, it's a space for you to create a listing to kind of highlight who you are as a roommate, who you want to live with, kind of what are your living habits. Are you a clean person, a messy person? Are you an early bird or a night owl? You can filter out who it is that is on here based on your living preferences. And it's a great way to connect with individuals. You'll notice here that there are folks that are attending universities all throughout Boston, including Boston University, Emerson College, and of course, Boston College, which you'll find right here. Is a student who is looking to live with others. This is a way for you to connect with Boston College individuals as well as students at neighboring institutions, both undergraduate and graduate. So a really great way to connect with folks. And lastly, I wanted to show you the resources tab here, which you'll find, depending on the size of your screen, either up here in the top bar or on the left here under resources. And this is a whole slew of information, really great stuff. I'm going to highlight a couple of those things here in just a moment. But to start off, we'll chat or show you the moving and storage company's information if you're looking for assistance moving in our area, or if you're looking for information on furniture and houseware rental or purchase, either new or used. So a lot of great options there available for you. All right, so I'm going to jump back over to the presentation now that I've kind of reviewed the database in some. We're going to go back and forth to some of the resources there as well. A couple of things I want to highlight for you is that we can review your lease. So if you are interested in pursuing a space, we're happy to take a look at the lease. Just know that we're not lawyers. We don't have any legal training. Anything that we point out is only because we have learned of it through experience. You can send that lease to us at offcampus@bc.edu, where you can also schedule individual or group meetings if you have questions, anything under the sun related to off campus. We're really here to help with that. So for today's presentation, we're going to cover all of these topics in this order. Again, I know that you might have questions as they come up. Please go ahead and send those in directly to Sarah. I believe that we have adjusted the chat so that you can chat with the host. So go ahead and send those questions on into Sarah, and she's going to moderate those questions for us at the end. So the apartment search process here, I'm not going to overview this step by step, but I do want to highlight steps number 4 and number 6, because this is where I see students get caught up most often. Number 4, you really need to either tour the apartment in person or virtually, checking for facilities and safety. There is no reason you shouldn't, you wouldn't do this, right? You wouldn't buy a house sight unseen, most likely, nor should you rent an apartment sight unseen. It's not good practice. Yes, some folks do it, I suppose, but it's not recommended. The important thing to know is that when you sign on to something, you're locked in. There's no getting it out of it. And so you need to make sure that this is really a place that you want to be. So tour the apartment. If you can't get to the apartment because you're across the country, never fear. Have the landlord or the property manager or the agent take you on a tour on Facebook Messenger, on FaceTime. Have them do a 3D tour. There's given the pandemic, many agencies now have 3D tour capabilities. Look at a whole slew of photos and recorded videos, anything that you can do to confirm that what you're signing on to is actually something that you want to live in is really, really important. Step number 6, you need to review all documentation prior to signing anything, even an application. Because if you sign an application with a leasing agent, there may be non-refundable clauses in there, and therefore any application fee that you pay, you wouldn't get back if you tried to exit that application process. So best to just review everything up front so that if you sign for an application, you are certain that if you are accepted for that application, you're going to move into that apartment. Make any changes as you need them. And again, you need to read that line by line. And we're happy to take a look at what you might have. So feel free to send that our way if you so desire. So talking about some upfront costs here. I've briefly mentioned non-refundable application fees. Those are legal to be charged by realtors, agents, brokers. They are illegal if they are charged by a landlord, right? A landlord can't require an application and then charge an application fee. Okay, so please know that. But some upfront costs in addition to an application fee if you use an agent is your first month's rent, right? You need to move in to your apartment for the first month, and you're going to likely be asked to pay that upon signing the lease. You're going to also likely be asked to pay the last month's rent. That's really a way for landlords to ensure that they get that last month's of payment, even if you were to ditch them a little early prior to the end of the lease. They're going to get that last month's worth of rent. So that's a way for them to protect themselves, and they're going to ask for that upfront. They may ask for it at the lease signing, but certainly will require that by the first date of your lease. You would also be required to pay a security deposit, most likely. That's a slush fund, essentially, for the landlord to pull to make any repairs that are intentionally repairs of damage that's intentionally caused by you beyond normal wear and tear, intentionally or unintentionally, I should say. This is money that they would hold in a separate account in escrow, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. That it can be up to 1 month's worth of rent. It cannot be more legally. It can be less, and if it's less, that means less money that you're paying up front, which it can only really be to your benefit. You might be asked to pay a reasonable lock and change fee and an agent's fee. If you use a rental agent, you're going to be asked to pay the commission on that agent. That is different than most other places in the United States. In Boston, you'd be asked to pay that commission for that agent. That can be any amount of money. It is negotiable. Typically, however, it's 1 month's worth of rent, and it is paid upon signing the lease. If you were being asked to pay more than 1 month's worth of rent, you're getting a bad deal, and I'd really recommend that you search for a new agent. If you're asked to pay less than 1 month's rent or no agent fee at all, even if you do use an agent, you're getting a really great deal, and please know that. But typically, again, it's 1 full month's worth of rent. So practice has it that all of these things add up to 1 month's worth of rent, save for the locking key change fee and any application fees. Those are generally much smaller. So let's say, hypothetically, your monthly rent is $1,000. You would be asked to pay potentially upfront upon signing the lease $4,000. So know that when you enter this apartment search process. Again, $3,000 if you would not use that agent. Okay. So security deposits, again, this is money that's used to make repairs after you move out due to damage beyond reasonable wear and tear caused by you. Within 30 days of receiving the deposit from you, the landlord must provide a receipt to you with the following information: the name and location of the bank in Massachusetts that the money is being held, the account number of that account at that bank, and the amount of the deposit that you gave them. If you have trouble getting your deposit back at the end of your lease with after 30 days after the end of your lease, feel free to reach out to us. We can certainly advise you in that situation, but hopefully that won't be the case for you. Again, just as a reminder, security deposits can be a max of 1 month's rent. Legally, they cannot be more than that. Rental agents, we've talked about the commission fee, also known as a finder's fee, also known as an agent or broker's fee. Again, it's typically 1 month's rent. Please know that much like a landlord can't charge an application fee, they also can't charge a broker's fee because they cannot serve as an agent for their own personally owned space, even if your landlord also happens to be a real estate agent. You can find local agencies in our area on the off-campus housing database, which I'm going to show you right here. It's under the resources tab, and it's again a list of agencies in our area. We don't advocate for one agency over another, so you need to find one that really you feel comfortable with. Shop around. It's okay to not go with the first agency that you find. And really, you need to find one that you feel good about, that you feel has your best interests at heart, and they know exactly what it is that you're looking for. All right, so also on the off-campus housing database is our rental cost comparison. And what you're seeing on your screen is the first half of that comparison. This is really designed to help you get a sense of what you might pay upon moving to the Boston area. It's divided up by 4 neighborhoods or municipalities in and around our campus and the type of accommodation that you might be looking at. The costs that you're seeing here have been informed by what we've seen on the off-campus housing database, as well as other listing services such as Zillow. And it represents the entire lease's rent for that unit. So if you are renting a 2-bedroom place in Newton and it comes up as $2,000 and you're living with 4 people, you would divide that by 4. Again, this is the entire unit's worth of rent. Some things to know is that private rooms and homes tend to be most affordable, and the most expensive are 1-bedroom apartments in which you're living alone. More privacy generally equals more money, and the best way to reduce monthly expenses in rent is to have a direct roommate, somebody who you share a bedroom with. At minimum, for graduate students, having a direct roommate may not be something that you're really desiring. So perhaps having a roommate in the apartment, perhaps not splitting a bedroom with you, might be more to your liking. The second half of the rental cost comparison really kind of shows the averages among low, medium, and high priced apartments based on the type of accommodation. So most graduate students, we find, really are living with others, but are in their own specific bedroom. They're not sharing it with a direct roommate. So the medium cost in our area, averaged across all municipalities and neighborhoods, is about $1,200. But again, everything varies. So please go ahead and do your due diligence in searching for what you think is going to work best for you. I want to show you this rental cost comparison. Again, you can find it on the resources tab of our website and kind of get a sense of what those costs are. I neglected to mention that this bottom half is what you might pay as an individual. This top half I did mention already is for the entire unit. So this is what you might expect to pay on an individual basis. Great. So again, if you have questions, go ahead and submit those to Sarah in the chat function. Please don't send them to me because I am presenting. I won't be able to read them until the very end. So go ahead and submit those to Sarah. The question that we often get is, am I getting a good deal? Well, that really depends on you, right? Apartments are only worth as much as someone is willing to pay. We find that location and access to public transit are really huge factors in determining the price of an apartment. So for example, a small worn down apartment along the B line, which is our train system in Brighton, right next to campus, may have a higher rent than in a larger, great condition apartment in West Roxbury, which is farther away and would require bus transportation, a car, perhaps a bike. So really focus on the factors that are most important to you. If you don't mind taking some time to get to campus, then perhaps an apartment in West Roxbury is a good option for you. We also often get the question, can we negotiate the lease? Well, yes, of course, absolutely. We always recommend negotiating. Try and get yourself a better deal. Sometimes you can lock in a longer lease for a lesser cost, especially if they think that you're a good tenant. So perhaps offering landlord recommendations, references, whatever it might be to help you demonstrate that you are a good tenant in good standing, have good history renting apartments. Other negotiables include pets. They might ask to pay a pet deposit. Subletting is a negotiable. There may be a subletting fee that you have to pay if you're looking to sublet your space. Utilities can or cannot be included. Depends. All can be negotiated. Parking spots, of course. One thing about pets is that a landlord can state that they are not allowing pets in the apartment. They can write that into the lease. There is a difference between a pet and a service animal, however. Service animal is protected under the Americans with Disabilities Act that helps with the everyday functions of a person. That is different than an emotional support animal, and emotional support animals are not covered under the ADA. So if you have questions about that, please go ahead and reach out to us and we'll do our best to advise you on that. All right. And last but not least here, I want to chat about the first day of school. You should know in the city of Boston, most leases will begin on September 1st. It's historically the date that all leases turn over across the city. The challenge here is that fall 2021 classes, and typically in most years, the first day of class is before September 1st. In this case, school starts on Monday, August 30th. So you're going to need to work with your agent, landlord, or property manager to discuss whether an earlier move-in is possible. Otherwise, you're going to need to make alternate arrangements until your housing is ready. Typically, this isn't an issue because most of our landlords are pretty accustomed to working with students and they know that school starts before September 1st, and so they're willing to make some adjustments. Also, they may be renting to students currently who might be moving on to a different apartment, having graduated. They may be off on a summer internship, whatever it might be. They may not be in the apartment, and so you certainly would have the opportunity to move in early. But you need to coordinate with your agent or landlord or your property manager to make that happen. Often we get the question about financial standing and how to demonstrate that, especially as an international student. Domestic students tend to have an easier time because they are able to show account information pretty easily, and their guarantors are generally US based. So if you're an international student, this slide's really for you. So the question is how to navigate a credit report or US based guarantor requirement. Well, some of the options that you have available to you is you can show an I-20 since that has some financial information on it, or if you have a US savings account, you can show them the account statement. Of course, you're going to want to redact any sensitive information like the account number, etc. You could offer a larger security deposit to help them be reassured about your financial standing. That's not something they can ask of you, but you can certainly offer it. You could also offer to pay several months of rent in advance. Again, that's not something that they can ask of you, but you can offer it. And you need, in either case, to document that you have paid that additional money so that can be noted. You could also use a third-party rent insurance broker such as Insurent. We don't have personal experience working with this, but sometimes students don't have a guarantor available. And for those of you who don't know what a guarantor is, it is essentially kind of what it sounds like. It is somebody that guarantees to the landlord that the rent will be paid by the tenant. So often among undergraduate students, this is a parent or a guardian that is able to guarantee that the rent will be paid either by the student, and if not by the student, then by that individual parent. And since most graduate students are taking classes full time, landlords want to ensure that their tenants have the ability to make payment. If that is still unsatisfactory, you may have to look for another apartment. So just know that large complexes are more likely to require a guarantor than an individual landlord. You can find guarantor information on the off-campus housing database. I'll go ahead and show you that right now. It's kind of an easy way for you to see or get a sense of what a guarantor really is. So it talks about what it is, what does it mean, and who can be it. And again, overviews those options to waive the guarantor requirement. So again, lots of great resources on the database. Really would recommend that you take a look at that. You can simply just click Control F and find any document that we've referred to today. So questions that we get here about transportation are quite often frequent. I've highlighted here on the screen our 3 campuses. So our law campus over in Newton is up here. Our Brighton campus is over here, home of the School of Theology and Ministry. And then our main campus, Chestnut Hill campus, is right here. And you can see that we're kind of divided between the neighborhood of Brighton, which is a neighborhood in the city of Boston, and the city of Newton. And then a lot of graduate students are going to live down in Brookline, or if you're a law student, some will live up towards the law school in Newton, and some graduate students will live back here in Brighton. I will say that a lot of our undergraduate students are going to live directly right in this area in Brighton. But that shouldn't discourage you from living in Brighton. I lived right back here on Shannon Street last year, and it was a really great spot for me. It's easy walk to campus if you want to get to it. Obviously, of course, plenty of bus shuttle to get to campus, as well as the train, which will go along all the way into the heart of campus. So if you have a car, the world is really your oyster. You can live anywhere you'd like. I'm going to go through pretty briefly some of these cities and municipalities, neighborhoods, give you a sense of what you might be looking for. So Cambridge is kind of most famous for being the home of Harvard College, Harvard University. It's a very young, diverse, dynamic place. It's can be a little bit more expensive just because it's a little bit more difficult to get things to and from. If you're studying economics, I just got out of my economics class last semester. So at any rate, it's a great spot to live. A lot of young professionals living in Cambridge, and of course, college students as well, graduate students certainly. Somerville is the town directly adjacent to Cambridge, has a lot of the same characteristics, and might be just a little bit more inexpensive to live, but not by much. Waltham and Wellesley, as well as Needham, they're suburbs to our west, homes of both Brandeis, Babson, Bentley universities. These are places that you might find cheaper rent. They are also kind of what you would typically expect in a suburb, a little bit quieter of a space, of course. And you're going to need a car most likely to get to and from campus. Boston neighborhoods are any neighborhood in Boston. Of course, you're certainly not excluded from living in the city by any means. If you don't have a car, no problem. Most actually don't bring one. So I would encourage you to take a look at Brighton, Brookline, Newton, or Watertown. Again, Brighton is a neighborhood in Boston. That's where a majority of our undergraduate students will live. But I lived there last year. It's a great spot to be. A lot of young folks with also long-term residents. Washington Street is a great spot to grab a drink, go get dinner, whatever it might be. Brookline is that space where I pointed where a lot of graduate students we find live. It's a little bit more expensive, but is a lot of young professionals, a lot of graduate students we mentioned. And it's really all around a great place to live. And I'll show you the profile that we've created on Brookline in just a second. Newton is an older neighborhood, a lot of older families, very, very quiet and very protective of its quiet. And that's pretty much all I'll say about that. And Watertown is a town to the north. Need to get to campus by bus if you're going to live in Watertown, or by car, of course. There's no direct train line or anything like that. But it's a very diverse place, relatively inexpensive rent. A lot of young families, young students, young professionals, young adults. It's a pretty dynamic and diverse place. But I'll go ahead and show you the profile that we created on the town of Brookline. There we are. So this is Coolidge Corner, home of the Coolidge Corner Theater, which you'll see down here, and Brookline Brooksmith, which is over here, and my favorite little crepe place, which is right here. But as you can see, the Sea Line goes right through Brookline here, and it's easy to get to and from on public transportation. A really fun place, but all of these profiles, which you'll find on our off-campus housing database under the resources tab, kind of tells you who lives here, the apartment types, and some places to check out, some recommendations. Most importantly, however, it kind of gives you a sense of what are the commute times to campus and how might you get to and from wherever it is that you are and campus. So thanks again to Sarah for creating these to kind of help you get a sense of where it is that you might want to live. Again, you can find that on the resources tab. All you got to do is search profiles, and there pulls up the neighborhood profiles and descriptions. So a lot of great information here. All right. So again, if you have any questions, go ahead and submit those to Sarah. If you're an international student and you're looking to drive here, I've got put together a little bit of information. I want to admit that I'm not an expert on international licensure, so please know that you're likely going to have to do some additional investigation. But if you're here for one academic year, you can drive on an international license so long as you have an official English translation. If you're here for more than one academic year, you can drive on a Massachusetts driver's license. You can look for a testing exemption if you have a driver's license in your home country and an exemption applies to that country in the Commonwealth. And you can also apply for an international driver's license if you can't get an official English translation, or if you want to rent a car. Often we find that having an IDL is an easy way to get that rental car. So if you are going to bring your car, please do some research. If you're going to live in Boston, the city of Boston, let's say you're going to live in Brighton, which is a neighborhood of Boston, you're going to need a parking permit to park on the street. And that's going to require you to have the original title be in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and in your name. So if you may have to convert your original title, perhaps. The Massachusetts title needs to indicate that your car is principally garaged at your apartment's address, and then you would submit that to the city of Boston to receive your permit. So there could be there are some costs associated with that, which may include title conversion if you're coming from out of state, and the annual excise tax that you would pay to the city of Boston. You'd also might be looking to get a permit to park on campus, which is an additional expense. And so you can check out our transportation and parking overview on our off-campus housing database. I'm going to show you that real quick. Again, it's a great summary here of what it is that you might be expecting to pay, how you can find on versus off-campus parking. If you're looking to rent an off-campus parking spot, you can find a list here, how to get the Translock app, talking about public transportation, what your rush hour commute times might be, and again, links to how to get that Boston neighborhood parking permit. All right, moving right along. This is our Boston College Shuttle. I referenced the application, the app that you could download on your phone to track the shuttle buses in real time. You can find it right here. This is the Translock app. Again, all of our buses have GPS location services, so you can find the buses, where it's going, where you can meet it, and time out your day. This is the Commonwealth Avenue shuttle route, so you can kind of see that it comes all the way down to Cleveland Circle, which is Brookline, again, where we find a lot of graduate students live. And we have a bus stop right here that will take us all the way around the Chestnut Hill campus and down into Brookline a little bit. Again, this is the Brighton area where we find that a lot of our undergraduate students live right in here. And then I, of course, lived back here. Again, all walkable, easy to get to a bus as well to catch a shuttle to campus. And here's the Law School Express route. So you can see that it also goes down to Brookline all the way out to the law school and back again. And you can catch it at any point in the day. All right, as we kind of wind down our presentation today, I want to cover some information about your tenant rights and responsibilities. And highlight really too, you have a legal right to a safe and habitable environment. That really means that you have the right to a space that meets the housing code in the Commonwealth as well as the city of Boston. For example, that includes heat, having hot water, a pest-free apartment, doors that lock. You also have the right to quiet enjoyment of property. I'll talk about that a little bit more detail in just a second, but essentially means what it says. You have the right to enjoy your property in peace and quiet without the disturbance of your landlord at ungodly hours of the day or without notification. I should highlight that you have the right against landlord retaliation or unlawful discrimination based on protected classes. If you feel like you are, any of those are being violated, please feel free to reach out to us. Again, you can find the rights and responsibilities as a tenant on our off-campus housing database. Simply read up on these to know what your rights are. And you also have responsibilities. You need to pay your rent in full and on time each month. The landlord can request a preferred payment method if they'd like, but I really would recommend check. It is the best way to pay. It can be canceled if it needs to be. Some landlords will request Venmo. That's your personal preference, but certainly not our recommendation. Again, having a checking account in which you can write checks is going to be the best way to pay for your space. Some property management companies might also have an electronic transfer service that works just fine. You need to keep the unit clean, dispose of trash properly, and follow the rules outlined in the lease because that's what you have agreed to. And of course, if there's any issues in the apartment, please, please, please notify your landlord as soon as possible or whomever they've designated as being responsible for maintenance. Okay, so last but not least, roommates and landlords. We'll start with roommates. You need to choose them wisely because in the Commonwealth, you are more than likely going to see in your lease that you are listed among the tenants being jointly and severally liable for the property. What this means is that everybody on the lease is treated as one entity. So in reality, what that means is that if one person doesn't pay, say there's 4 of you, if one of the 4 doesn't pay, the other 3 will need to come up with the money of that 4th person because you're seen as one person. The landlord is expecting payment in full. They do not care about who is paying. They just care about being paid. So additionally, that extends to if one of the roommates violates the lease, anybody and everybody can be held responsible, which is why we say more people could mean more problems. Certainly a greater number of factors to consider. All right, so on the topic of landlords, they have that obligation to ensure a habitable living environment, again, which we said means that the space that they lease needs to meet all housing code requirements. And you can, of course, again, find the housing code on our off-campus housing database. We've got a checklist. I'm not going to screen share it, but just simply search housing code or housing law, and you'll find it there on the database. Our landlords also have an obligation to uphold the implied covenant of quiet and enjoyment. So your landlord needs to act in a way that allows for the tenants to peacefully and reasonably use the rented space. We see this become a problem most often when the landlord just shows up at any random hour of the day without providing any notice to the tenants. That violates the implied covenant of quiet enjoyment. The challenge here is that the Commonwealth law does not dictate how much advance notice should be given by the landlord to the tenants when they need to come to the apartment, nor does it say how that notification needs to be given. So I'd recommend that you write into the lease the expectations around notification for coming over to the apartment. Generally, a good rule of thumb is 24 hours advance notice in writing, preferably be via email. Certified mail is the best, but I recognize that snail mail is very slow, and so that may not be the most expeditious way. But certainly, email is better than text message. So do what works best for you, but 24 hours advance notice tends to be a good recommendation. There is no law again, so you need to write that into the lease. Now, if you have landlord problems, you've got a number of resources. Inspectional Services Department in the city of Boston is the housing code enforcer. So if you have a problem in your apartment with a violation of the housing code, I'd recommend that you reach out to your landlord or whomever they've designated as responsible for maintenance first, instead of going directly to Inspectional Services, because Inspectional Services is the enforcer of the housing code and can fine or cite the landlord for those violations. So if you kind of go around your landlord, they're going to be pretty upset because you haven't given them a chance to rectify the issue. But nonetheless, Inspectional Services is there. You have the right to use that. You could also refer to the Attorney General's office or constituent services in the city of Boston. So let's say you are running into problems with your landlord. You need to make sure to document everything, which includes taking photos of the property, saving copies of the lease, and any and all email or written communication. Now, if you do find yourself in an issue with your landlord, go ahead and reach out to us and we'll kind of advise you of your options. But some of the other options you have available to you is that you can withhold the rent until a problem is fixed, or repair an issue yourselves and deduct the cost of the repair from the next month's rent. I'd really recommend that you probably use that as a last resort. Certainly, I don't want you to be spending your own money to repair an issue for an apartment that you don't own, but that is an option. You could also file in small claims court as well. Again, reach out to us if this becomes an issue, and we'll be happy to kind of advise you how we can. So that's the presentation that we have available today. And I want to highlight what we have coming up next week. It's our premier event for the summertime to help you find housing off campus. That's going to take place next Friday, June 11th from 11 to 1 Eastern time, 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern. There you'll be able to meet with rental agents, brokerages, and large apartment complexes and property management companies to take tours of apartments that they have, to talk about the listings that are available. Again, this is a way for you to meet and greet with rental agents to find one that works for you if that's something that you're looking for, if you're looking to use their services. This is free. It's no obligation. We'd really like to see you there. So go ahead and take your phone out and scan that QR code to take the 2 seconds it takes to register for the event. And hopefully we will see you next Friday, June 11th at the Off-Campus Housing Fair. You can pop in at any time that you'd like. It's open from 11 to 1. So feel free to come and go as you please. So there's our contact information. Our phone number is available on the screen, as well as our email. Email is the best way to get in touch with us because we're kind of transitioning back to the office from working remotely due to the pandemic. Nonetheless, if you give us a call, feel free to leave an email and we will return your call as soon as we can. But what we'd really appreciate is if you give us a follow on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. You can check out the Off-Campus Housing Database, which we showed you a lot of today. If you'd like some more information about anything or everything off campus, you can also take a look at our blogger. All right, so I'm going to leave it on this screen for just a little bit. And I think at this point, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. So Sarah, is there any questions that were submitted that we didn't get answered in the presentation today?
Yeah, so for the first question, a common one, will this be shared / how can people find this information after the session?
Yes, so today's session it is being recorded. And so we're going to try and post this. Nonetheless, the previous posting for a graduate information session that was recorded last summer is already on our off-campus website. If you just find our off-campus page on the bc.edu domain, you can view the recording there. If you go to the BC Residential Life YouTube page, you'll find the recording there as well. Some of that information is a little outdated because it was in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, but nonetheless, the information regarding off-campus housing really is still applicable. But we will try and get this updated presentation on our website as soon as we can.
All right, the next question, when would you say is the best time to search for apartments based on price and availability?
I would say that you're really going to want to start that search this month. I'd say, in the next week or so, if you're a graduate student. At the latest, you really want to have an apartment signed by the end of July, no later than that, because come August 1st, the options are going to be limited, and you're now under a real time crunch to the start of the start of the fall semester. So I would say you're in the real sweet spot, which is precisely why we host our off-campus housing fair in the second week of June. I'd recommend that you start that search now.
The next question was a little like specific / out of our purview, but if you could just quickly address, for the instance of students trying to use loans to pay rent, what resources or contacts are available for them to go about finding out how to receive those loans and in order to pay rent?
It is a little out of our purview, unfortunately. I'd really recommend that you touch base with your financial aid advisor in the Office of Student Services. Unfortunately, I can't, in good conscience, provide any guidance on that. So I'm sorry that I'm not able to answer that question to whomever asked that.
And then another question, you briefly touched on it during the neighborhood profiles, but like in your opinion, your sense, what locations would you say most graduate students tend to live in?
Yeah, so let me see if I can go back to the map here. All right, I think this one will do. All right, so this is Cleveland Circle right here on your screen in Brookline. A lot of students are going to live down in Cleveland Circle or along Beacon Street right up here, going all the way, kind of heading towards downtown. A lot of graduate students are going to live there. We just typically find that it's seen as a young professionals area, which a lot of graduate students want to be around other young people who are not traditionally aged college students. Again, I also mentioned that I lived in a traditionally aged college student area in Brighton, and it was great. And I did not find that I was living in and among graduate or undergraduate students. I was living among long-term residents, and it was really a lovely place to be. Just a walk all the way to quick walk to Washington Street, where a lot of nightlife is. And so that's where we would find students living in Brighton up in here. But again, we find that a lot of them live in Brookline. Of course, if you've got a car, you can live anywhere. And so, undoubtedly, there are folks who live in Cambridge. There are up here in the north, there are folks who live out to the west in the suburbs or in West Roxbury, which is a neighborhood in Boston. But we don't interact with those folks quite as much, but we do interact with our students in the Cleveland Circle area quite often.
And the next question, is it common for landlords to raise rent every year?
Yes, they have the right to do so. Yes, it is pretty common to make some small adjustments. Typically, we don't see large jumps, but yes, it is. It is the cost of inflation is generally 2% every year, and so I would imagine that there may be some inflationary rate adjustments as a result. But certainly, they can set the price to whatever they would like.
And then, so the next question, and as of right now, the last question. So if there's any last minute questions, anyone, send those to me in the chat. One student, while you're going over transportation, tried looking on the Transloc app to try and figure it out. Could you just briefly explain again how to go about finding the bus routes on the Transloc app or website?
I don't have personal experience using the Transloc app since I have a car and have since I was a graduate student. But if you want to go to, let's see if I can, if you want to go to our transportation, let's see if I've got it pulled up still. It's here somewhere. There it is. And you click either of these buttons, it'll take you to the page to download the Transloc app. Perhaps the best way is just to click on the transportation and parking website to find that link. And if I imagine there are some instructions on the transportation site, but that's something I should probably investigate a little bit more. Unfortunately, I don't know the step-by-steps to getting getting that. But I'm happy to send information if you want to reach out to us at offcampus@bc.edu. I know I've got some information from parking and transportation to send you. I did have a question come in here about the difference between, I think it was, let me look real quick, the difference between a studio and a 1-bedroom apartment. So a studio here is kind of what you would consider an open concept space, right? So it's both the bedroom, the living room, the kitchen, all in one open space. So there's no doors really except to the bathroom. A 1-bedroom apartment has a separate 1 bedroom with a door, so that you walk into the bedroom, you can shut the door behind you, separate from the living room and the kitchen. So that is the difference between a studio and a 1-bedroom apartment.
Okay, we have one other question come in since my last announcement to send any other questions. Do off-campus graduate students at BC have full-time access to the campus?
Yes, you have full access to the campus and any and all of its resources, with the exception of the rec center. That is something that you would need to pay for as a graduate student. The only folks on campus who do not have to pay for the rec center are undergraduate students, because it's paid through their student fees. If you'd like to opt into the rec center, you can certainly do so, but it will cost me money as an employee. But outside of that, you're welcome to use any and all resources on campus.
Yeah, so that's all the questions I've received so far. Again, if anyone has any last minute questions on your mind that you want to send to me in the chat quickly, and we'll be happy to answer those for you.
Well, if not, I'm going to go ahead and say feel free to send us an email at offcampus@bc.edu. You should be able to see that on your screen right there, or give us a phone call. Happy to help guide you from there. But I do appreciate your time today. And again, welcome to Boston College. We're so happy to have you. Congratulations again. We will see you in the fall. And if you have any trouble or any concerns or questions, feel free to reach out and give us a follow on Instagram if you wouldn't mind. I would really appreciate it. But we hope you have a wonderful summer and take care. Thanks so much.